it is Love is Blind season, and I don't watch much reality TV, but I do love a good Love is Blind. So, we are discussing today Alex and Madison. As you've seen, if you have watched up until episode 6, there are so many couples that they showcase this season. I didn't even count. I started taking notes, y'all, but it was just too much to keep up with. But I did want to touch on some of the couples that started to present some of the things that I talk about on this channel. That being Madison and Alex. I'm going to say I'm very proud of them because in episode 2, we meet Madison and Alex, and Madison comes on and she talks about her, and she was in the corporate world right out of college, and then she goes on to become an artist. Alex, he was a former teacher. Now he is a real estate broker, I believe. And they're talking about things that they enjoy, right? How they've grown up. And I think I was very proud to see them discuss their attachment style. And y'all know I am an attachment style stan, a trauma stan. I am an IFS stan. So hearing this, it got me giddy. Okay. So, y'all, I'm not going to lie. This season, I probably was snoozing because it's a little bit. But as soon as I heard, like, oh, I'm an avoidant attachment, my eyes went up. So from the start, you could kind of tell in the pods, Alex, right? And I'm going to put the picture on the screen for y'all who don't know. This is Alex on the left. We can see Madison on the right. These are the people that I'm talking about. And they go into the pods and they start discussing, the attachment styles. And I think Alex starts to ask, hey, what's your attachment style? And Alex says, his is an anxious attachment. And then, much to his surprise, Madison starts to say that she's an avoidant. Now, as you get the background on Madison, you hear that she's been parentified. In the therapy world, we call it parentified, right? So she had to grow up faster than she needed to. So she might have missed out on a lot of childhood experiences. I like to say Michael Jackson is a good example. I like to say he's a parentified, or he had to grow up fast. He wasn't parentified, right? But parentified children usually have to take care of their caregivers, their siblings, because maybe their caregivers had substance abuse, excuse me, like we see with Madison. Maybe their caregivers were working a lot, so they had to take care of their siblings. And so we're starting to see this formation of Madison and her lifestyle. And we see how her brother unfortunately passes as well. And so she's traumatized, right? And we see a lot of that throughout the season. So it's nothing new to the show. But we're learning that she is deeply traumatized, right? And it's so interesting because the way she shows up with Alex is really different than how she shows up with Mason, right? And so she is a lot more playful with Mason. And I don't know if it's because she feels she's a bit more safe with Alex, where she believes she can trauma dump. I don't know if it's because, or trauma share, because I don't want to say she was dumping. A lot of people will say she's dumping, but she was trauma sharing. I don't know if it's because of the edits the producers did, but she shares a lot, right? And I want to say that her avoidance is a coping mechanism. So if you guys know anything about attachment styles, like I talk about on this channel, attachment basically happens in childhood. It's the way in which your caregivers show up, forms the style in which you'll be with different people. A lot of times people don't talk about this, but your attachment can be different with your family members than it is with your friends, than it is with your romantic partner, than it is with your work buddies. Okay, and so in these relationships, as they're talking, Madison and Alex is realizing that their attachment styles with their partners differ. I tell y'all all the time that usually the most common pair is an avoidant and an anxious partner. And so avoidant people, they usually withdraw from emotions. They want validation within themselves. They'll retreat if there is perhaps even something happening in the relationship. We need to talk about this right now. You're not leaving this space until we talk about this right now. And usually this occurs because that person is a people pleaser. And so with Alex saying he's an anxious attached partner, I actually want to applaud him, because as soon as Madison says she's an avoidant, he pulls away, right? And that's not because he doesn't want things to work out. He's realizing the damage that might occur if he is in a relationship with an avoidant partner. And sad to say, most people nowadays are in a relationship with either an anxious partner or avoidant partner and not secure. Now, in the four attachment styles, you have a secure partner who has grown up, and not in this dynamic, but a secure partner usually has grown up in an environment where it was safe to share feelings. Their caregiver wasn't hot or cold. They felt safe being vulnerable. With an avoidant partner, there was no vulnerability there. So with she had this traumatic childhood where it was really hard for her to even say what she needed to say, because her father, she even said, I quote, my father used to get really angry and I didn't like that, right? And so she would retreat. She would retreat on herself or into her room or what have you, so that she didn't have to deal with that. Meaning that she is not open to, or didn't want to be open to, those kind of emotions. And I understand that, right? A lot of people don't want to be in the presence of anger. And so even in an intense emotion that we started to see with what's his name, Alex, when he was standing up for Mason, the intensity wasn't really translated on screen, but you could know it was intense because I think Alex at one point in episode 6 says, hey, I'm an empathetic person and I felt like Mason was really hurt. The problem here is Madison didn't like that. I saw a viewer put this up here and she said, and the viewer says, I think this was a Reddit, they were talking about Madison here, and it says she was so manipulative. She played Mason just so Meg wouldn't have him. She didn't want him. She just wanted the two men to pick her. She's terrible. But at the end, she played herself because she lost out on both. LOL. Okay, I'm gonna keep this up so y'all can read this. The whole reason why I'm doing this video is because I do want to extend some empathy for Madison. She went through a lot, and I don't want to speak for her because obviously the show was shot a year ago. I don't know what she did in her past. I don't know if she's truly dealt with some of the trauma she's been through. But when you have compounded trauma like that, it's so important to work through it before you even get into a relationship, or continue to work through it while you're in a relationship, because her avoidance is causing her to withdraw. In episode 6, I had wrote this down so I could share it with you guys. Alex at one point asks Madison, what's something you wouldn't be able to tolerate in a relationship? Instead of answering, right, she dodges the question. And again, I don't know if this was an editing thing or if she just truly dodged the question, but that was an avoidant move, because she deflects instead of engaging in the vulnerability that he wanted to have with her. She starts saying something like, I would be a good wife, right? And he agrees. He's like, yeah, I would be a good wife. And then she tries to pivot the conversation because he's just like, he's picking up on it. And she says something like, I think she said something like, oh, weren't you nervous when you walked into the pod? I wouldn't want to be here. Or weren't you nervous if you walked into the pod and wasn't here, wouldn't you not want to be here? Because Alex then calls her out and says, like, why are you doing this? Like, why aren't you addressing this question? And he says it in a nice way. And so here we're realizing that, okay, when Madison doesn't like something, she deflects. And we know that to be true with avoidant partners because they do not want to engage in conversations that feel really hard for them. I wouldn't call this manipulation, though. I don't think what she did to Mason was manipulative at all. I do think it was unfair for her to go to Meg and say what she said. Meg is a different story. I'm not sure if I want to do an episode on her yet, but there were a lot of things I saw with Meg. She has such high energy. It's beautiful. But there were a lot of things that I saw with Meg that were also could be considered a red flag with people. But what Alex was simply trying to point out was that Madison gave Mason an unfair advantage, right? Because we see the two having such great chemistry on screen, but her attachment style kind of gets in the way. It tells me that Madison... Okay, I don't know. This is why I stopped going live, y'all, because my live stream always kicks me off. hopefully y'all can see and hear me, but I just want to finish up. So Madison's style is more of one that takes a stance of, hey, I'm going to retreat. This is how I save face. This is how I self-preserve. And there's nothing wrong with self-preserving. It's just when you're in a space of trying to be in a relationship with someone, placating someone's feelings isn't necessarily the way to go. Again, I don't think she's being manipulative. I think this is just the way in which she survives, and it's her survival mode. And I'm going to put this back up here for y'all to see again. But this is just the way in which Madison knows how to survive. I'm going to placate these serious issues. I'm going to not touch on these serious issues because I don't necessarily know how to work through them. At the end of the episode, we see that Alex is really working towards a secure attachment. He's being very direct. He is trying to be clear. He's trying to offer compassionate, and he wanted that compassionate communication from her. Well, he could not get the compassionate communication from her because she's kind of stuck in her avoidant attachment style. I think I've said it on the channel before, but it is possible for an avoidant and anxious person to work out. It's just, it's stable-ish. It's just very tiring. The goal is to always to be in a secure place with your partner. I also wanted to really touch on this cycle of pursuit and withdrawal because I think that's what was happening with Mason and Madison, not the manipulation. And it's actually technically what they all are doing in this space because it's the pods. You're trying for you. I think Madison just didn't really appreciate Mason kind of taking back the whole commitment piece because, again, I think she was a little vulnerable with him. And if you remember, when you're an avoidant, being vulnerable is really hard, right? And so her being vulnerable and then hearing it taken back, even though she didn't choose him, just builds up the wall even further. So this pursuit where both Mason and Alex do it, right? Where they're moving forward and then Madison's pulling away. But then Alex is even pulling away. And I could tell the very first time she out and said she was an avoidant, Alex was just like, hands up, no, I can't do this, I'm out. But he still gave it a try. And I'm going to assume he's doing it because the people pleaser in him was just like, well, maybe I can make this work. Maybe I can do things to help move her into the direction she needs to go so that she's not an avoidant anymore. And that is the mistake that we tend to make. We tend to take on the burden of our partner when it's not really our burden to take on, and maybe they need professional help. If you made it this far, I'm done. But for y'all who don't know me, hi, I'm Sia, the transparent therapist, and I help women and coach them through the trauma that they experience so that they can stress less and connect more with themselves, Christ, and others for longer lasting relationships. I really enjoyed just dissecting Madison and Alex. That were just in the pods because spoiler alert, they didn't make it. So neither Madison or Alex are engaged at this point to one another. So I think it was a healthy choice for both Madison and Alex. You can see in the previews that she comes back. You know, the editor set it up in a way to make it look juicy. I'm sorry. I love Love is Blind, but this season, not that I want to see drama, it was so overwhelming seeing all of these couples at once. But I think it's a great testament to what dating can look like, especially when you are not actively healing. And I'm not saying Madison isn't actively healing, but it's just a good testament to see what it's like, especially when you're trying to work through some of these attachment styles, and not even just attachment styles, but trauma, right? Your inner child, right? Trauma can come from the inner child wounds that you have not yet addressed. So if you would like this video, give it a thumbs up. For those who attended on the live, thank you for spending this time with me. Sorry about the last live. Don't even know if this is a part of the last live because Ecamm, I don't know what y'all doing. I might have to switch over, but nonetheless, walk good, keep the vibes high, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.